This is the long overdue video on how to make your onion dye. I make mine in a crock pot. My crock pot's not as fancy as this. This is a regular crock pot, and I did make the dye in that this time, but I usually just have a one that I have only for the dye, and it doesn't have all of these complicated things on it. It just has a little button that you turn low, high, and off. So I found these. They're slow cooker liners. I didn't use one, but it might be something that you could look into and use if you only have your one crock pot. I don't cook them on the stove top or in the oven, because what I do is I put, as I will show you, I put the skins in and I put it on either high or medium and leave it overnight. So the longer that it cooks, the darker your dye will be. And I've never tried it on the cooktop to see how long it would take. Okay, so I'm going to get ready, and we're going to first tell you a little bit about the onions, and then we'll start our dye. Now, the type of onion to use is, they're called yellow onions, and probably now you will not find them with a really brown, dark brown skin. When they come out of the ground, if you haven't grown onions or seen them being grown and pulled out, they just have the white. They're pretty much like that. That's the type of skin they are. They're not brown. And as they get older in winter, the skin turns brown, and then towards spring, before the new onions are planted, that's when it's really good to have your skins for your onions to use as dye, because that's when the most dye is in them. Now, I'm peeling them like this, and that's what you should save. You should never save this part or anything that has a part of the onion that's not dry, because it will rot your onions. Also, no plastic bags. Don't put them in plastic bags. They also will rot. I did have 2 pounds of the onions the new onions that just came out of the ground, and the skins were white, not quite as white as that, but almost. And I tried it, and this is what I got for the dye. If you can see it. It's very light, so you would get dye from it, but as far as aging anything or changing the color, I don't think that it would do very much for that. So don't try it with your new onions. Okay, so I'm going to now put the skins in the pot, and we'll get ready to cook them. So we'll now get our skins ready, and you can see this. I have my skins in a brown paper bag, and they dry nicely, and I just keep them in that. And I'm going to take some of the skins, and I've got nice brown ones, large ones. They're very crisp because they're really dry. So I'm going to fill, without smashing them down, I filled top. So I fill the pot without them being smashed down. Then I drench them and smash them down. I'll continue doing that because it probably sounds terrible on the video, and then I will come back when they're ready to put the water in. So I now have them scrunched up, and I've got about half of the pot. Now I would fill the pot up with water to almost here, and I would use hot water from the tap so you don't have to heat your water in the pot. Put the cover on and turn it to medium or high and let it go overnight. When I used my other pot, I would put it on medium, and you could actually smell the onions cooking. It would smell, the house would smell like you're making onion soup. So if you don't like that, if you don't like onions and onion soup, then just do it on low and let it cook a little longer. So okay, we're going to pretend that this has been in water and cooked overnight, and I'll come back and show you what happens. So I've cooked my skins overnight and I've drained them, and this is what they look like. They're slimy, very dark. Oh gosh, very dark. So I let them drain, and I get quite a bit. I get about 3 bottles of dye, and that's the color of the dye. It's quite dark, and you always shake it up before you use it because it settles, and that's how dark it is. Now the thing that is different from all of the other onion dye recipes that you find on the internet, they just use these once. They put them on the stove, and then they put whatever wool or yarn or something in them to color them. But when you drain those from the first batch, that was the first batch of onions, I drained them, I had my juice. I now put these back in and fill the pot as I did before with water and cook them overnight again. And this is what happens. Okay, that'll stay there. It's not quite as dark, but it's still, the onions still have dye in them. And there. Not as dark as this one. Put the two together. But it's too much dye to throw your skins out. So when the dye is like that, most of the time I do only 2, but you can actually do that again for 3 for another time, because there are times when you need to, you won't use the dark first batch. You'll half it with water, or 2/3 or a quarter, or whatever you're doing, and your third batch of water that comes off cooking them for the 3rd time, that's very good to do that, to make your dye lighter. So I probably, honestly, I probably wouldn't do it a 3rd time, but they are good to do a 3rd time if you don't have a lot of skins, and why waste the dye? So that's basically how to do it. You store them. You can either freeze it, or you can store them in jars. The only thing that will happen to it, is a bit of mold on the top, just like anything that you preserve. You put it in your jars hot and put the top on. You shouldn't have a problem. Even with recycled jars, like pickle jars and things like that, you shouldn't have a problem. But if you do, just skim the mold off. You heat the dye when you use it, so it really doesn't matter that much about the mold. Just make sure your mold is off the top, and then you heat it, and that will kill the mold that's in it. And you'll have no problems. So that is how to do your dye. Now, I'm going to do the onion dye in parts. This is the first part, how to make it. Then we'll do the second part on aging your rugs that you've made. And then I'll go on, when I have time, to add part 3 and so on, how to dye wool with your onions and how to change the colors, how much to water it down for different colors and that sort of thing. And I do have that on my blog, The Diary of a Rug Maker, but I'm going to show it to you again in video form. So I hope I've made everything clear about how to do the first batch. It's very simple, although I don't know how long you would cook it on a stovetop or in an oven. So it's best probably if you're going to do this for quite often and use it for dyeing wool and pennies, probably invest in a crock pot, a used crock pot. They're probably $10 to $20, and then you'll have no problems. Okay, now we'll go on to the second part, how to age the rugs that we've made, how to age the Diamond Teaching Rug and the new contest candle mat kit. And I hope you enjoy.